Welcome to the Always On podcast. I am your host, Duncan MacPherson. On this podcast, our objective is to empower our audience, which are very high caliber fee-for-service professionals, to always be working on their business and on themselves, personally and professionally. And to that end, on today's podcast, I had a really in-depth, thought-provoking conversation with Steve Sandusky. He's the founder of Belay Advisor Consulting, and he's the host of the Between Now and Success podcast, a business coach to high-performing financial advisors who's been coaching over 30 years and has impacted well over 1,000 advisory teams. In this episode, we discussed many things, including plateau avoidance, elevating the client experience, and ensuring your clients view you as the first call when any significant event happens in their financial life or when they're preparing for a critical life event. If you like this podcast, please like and share, tell your colleagues, and if you have any ideas for themes you'd like to hear down the road, just let us know. Thanks for listening. Well, I am brimming with anticipation for this conversation. Our next guest is an industry legend. I've known him for many years. He's one of the few thought leaders that has as much mileage as I do. Although, Steve, mine are city miles.
Yeah.
But again, a respected thought leader. But what I really respect and appreciate is not telling people what to think. It's more about how to think, how to interpret trends and navigate the noise. I really value what you're contributing to the industry. And Steve Sandusky has coached over 1,000 financial professionals in excess of 30 years in the business. My wife calls me a 30-year overnight success story, which is kind of funny. She also says, Steve, that I'm always right eventually.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. But Steve is the founder of Belay Advisor Coaching. Welcome, Steve. Glad you could make some time for us.
Yeah, well, Duncan, I am thrilled to be here. I know, as you mentioned, we've known each other for a long time, and it's great to have an opportunity here to sit down and have a really meaningful conversation. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. And, you know, it's interesting. I know some friends that are into mountain climbing, and I really like the metaphor of the Sherpa, the financial advisor, with his or her clients. So I just, as a quick refresh, I looked up again the pure definition of belay, and from a climbing perspective, because I think part of your mantra is how to climb higher, but belay is managing tension and arresting falls, which is an interesting symbol for what a financial professional does and obviously what you do for advisors. So how did you land on that in terms of a brand identity?
Yeah, well, I have been climbing mountains for 20 years. And
okay.
Yeah, and mostly here in the Pacific Northwest. So you're up in British Columbia. I'm just south of you in Portland, Oregon. And yeah, I've been climbing mostly volcanoes, and just so I really, as I was thinking about my business and what name I wanted to come up with, I wanted to start with something that had sort of a mountaineering theme to it. And as I was looking at all the different terms, the word belay stuck out. And so belay, for some of you, will certainly know that it's basically, there's a couple ways you can think about it. One is more of a safety feature where you've got someone that's up higher on the mountain and you're connected to a rope and you're helping that person to make sure that they don't, if they were to slip or fall, you're going to catch them with the rope. So it's more of a safety thing. But also it's a way to help you get up to a higher place. And so I felt like it just really reflected what I wanted to do, which was to both help people from making mistakes, but also give them an opportunity and a net from which they can spring higher. And I thought that belay would really fit both of those particular ideas.
Yeah, I like that. And even it's got to be freeing as a climber, liberating, knowing you could probably reach a little bit further, having that safety feature. So I really do like the metaphor. It's funny. My youngest son had some friends from Europe over last night because he went to school in the Netherlands, and they're driving around the Pacific Northwest. And on their journey today, they're going to head towards Mount St. Helens, which is quite an attraction, quite a story. I remember that as a teenager. So funny story. So I got home last night, and I was just wanting to consolidate my thoughts in creating the agenda for today. And then I realized, I forgot my notes back at the office. And I'm thinking, do I go back to the office and grab these notes? And of course, no. I go into AI, I go into Grok, and I type in, what do I need to know? What did I say? It's something like, what do I need to know about Steve Sandusky, the financial advisor coach? And it gave me just an unbelievable and very deep backstory, value proposition. It was a really interesting exercise because it's interesting. I know a lot of advisors who play at a pretty high level, and before they meet with a prospective client, they go into AI and say, okay, where's the alignment of interest between this person and our firm? Like, help me connect our value proposition to their needs and where they're going. AI is such a phenomenal tool from that perspective. So it got me very well prepared. Actually, learned some things about you I didn't know. But the first thing Grok told me to ask you about was your ROL, which is return on life, which I really like. So do you mind sort of easing in with a little focus on that?
Sure. So I have a business partner with that, Mitch Anthony. You and many other folks listening probably know who Mitch is. And so Mitch really was the originator of the idea of return on life. And he was one of the early people in the whole life planning movement. So he and I have known each other since about 2004 when I was working with Omani Carson at Peak Advisor Alliance. And we had hired Mitch to be speaking at one of our events. Well, then in about 2015, we got reconnected and decided to partner and start a business where we basically would be providing tools and training to financial advisors to help them be more effective at delivering life planning to their clients, because we felt like that was really the next evolution, which had been going on for some time, of how advisors will really deliver value. And so, that business is still going today, and we provide digital tools, which are essentially like profiles, conversation starters, and just helping clients get a better understanding of what is the money for, how can I live my best life possible with the money that I have. So it's really taking the emphasis off of the money and placing it on the life, and how can I get a better return on my life, not just a better return on my money.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, clearly with the accelerated commoditization in the business, that bedside manner, the relationship management arguably is as important as asset management. And I want to come back to that in a moment because I want to ask you a really important question. It's funny, I then asked Grok last night, I said, what questions should I ask Steve to have a meaningful podcast conversation? So I'm just going to rattle some of these off, okay? In no specific order.
Do you want me to answer them, or do you want to just rattle them off and then?
I definitely want your answers.
Okay.
Because you have a really interesting finger on the pulse and an enlightened perspective. So again, no specific order, but talk to me about your mindset around scalability, advisors scaling, shifting from organic to franchise readiness and scalable growth, if you don't mind starting there.
Yeah. I'd say first and foremost, is that really what you want to do? Because the reality is there's only a small percentage of financial advisors out there that really, truly have the desire and the motivation to do that. And it's kind of funny because a few weeks ago at the Barron's Independent Summit, I sat down with Omani Carson, and he and I were business partners for about 11 years running the Peak Advisor Alliance coaching business. And one of the things I started off in that podcast with, and the podcast just was published here recently, was I asked him, I said, let's go back to what we were teaching 25 years ago and see if it's still relevant today. And the first thing I asked him was, you've got this idea of the 3 secrets to success as an advisor. Secret number 1, relentless burning desire. Secret number 2, love affair marketing. Secret number 3, systemization. So this very first one, relentless burning desire, I think really ties into that, your question here, which is first and foremost, ask yourself, do I really want to scale my business? Do I really want to go through the work and the effort that's necessary to make that happen? Do I really want to manage all these people? And for many advisors, they want the end result, but they don't necessarily want what it takes to get to the end result. So I think I would just ask yourself, do I have the motivation? And if so, where's that motivation coming from? And is that motivation going to be sustaining through the difficult times, which it's really going to be difficult to get to some level of scalability for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's interesting. On the same wavelength, I've had many advisors come to me saying, how do I scale? And I would simply, of course, ask them, why is that important to you? Mm-hmm. And as you would know, it's not just what we get in life, it's who we become. We want a business that serves our life, not the other way around. And for many advisors, they've actually come to the realization that their business is a means to an end, and they've been putting off the end for a while. And sometimes, instead of scaling up, they grow down and simplify their lives and their businesses so they can go and pursue other things, go write the great American novel or go travel the world and visit every country that starts with the letter S. I mean, I've heard all kinds of crazy goals. But yeah, no, that's a great point.
If you want access to a Pareto coach 24/7, the Pareto AI Assistant is exactly that. Now smarter, faster, and more powerful than ever. Built in Pareto Academy and trained on the full Pareto system, it helps you implement best practices, answer questions quickly, and stay accountable, whether you're focused on growing, teaming, scaling, or planning your end game. Previously available only to our coaching clients, the Pareto AI Assistant is now included with the Turnkey Advisor membership. As a member, you'll also get advanced strategies, first-in-line access to everything happening at Pareto, exclusive resources, and more. Visit paretosystems.com/turnkey and use coupon code AODuncan20 to save 20%. That's AODUNCAN20. The easiest way to get started with Pareto is to join the community.
The key to scaling, based on the progression of the secrets, of course, is turning everything into intellectual property and systems that can be adopted by somebody else, so nobody's left to their own devices. They're following a process. So, but I like your perspective there. Here's the next question I was told to ask you. What is the most important consideration in switching from one firm to another that an advisor should keep in mind before making that move and that decision?
I think there has to obviously be a cultural match there. And I think first and foremost, you've got to look at the other organization and say, do our values line up? Does our thinking line up? Does our mindset line up? Does our desire to serve the client in a certain level, does that match up? And just making sure that there's a complete fit there. Do we have a way to solve issues when we disagree on something? Is it their way or the highway, or is there some type of collaborative problem-solving process? So I think that's first and foremost, making sure there's a meeting of the minds, that there's a cultural fit. And every buyer of advisory practices will tell you that's really the first thing that they're looking for, is they want to make sure anybody that we partner with, we are going to be a good cultural fit. Now, with that, I will add a little nuance, which is I would also say that in addition to a cultural fit, you may want to also look for a cultural addition, meaning what can I bring to the organization as well that is going to be a complement and is going to enhance the existing culture as opposed to me just being subsumed into the new organization. So I think that's might be a little twist to think about as well.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I mean, there's an old saying, before you get into any type of relationship, know how you're going to get out. Like, begin with the end in mind. And when you focus on the chemistry, the compatibility, the cultural alignment, that tends to be more enduring and more important as glue than the business opportunity. And of course, the second is, how does the client benefit? All roads have to lead to elevating the client experience. How does it contribute to that? And then, of course, the economic realities. But let all of that cascade down to that quantitative part. Okay, so here's the next question. And this is a very selfish question because I'm a little bit lazy today and I have to do a webinar on exit planning. So I want to pick your brain to see if it helps me with some ideas. I have a pretty simple mantra, Steve, that creativity is just my ability to conceal my sources. So I need some.
I think you're a little more than that, Duncan. You wouldn't have been in this profession for more than 30 years if that's what it was. But
well, my nickname, my wife, she says I'm the smartest kid in summer school. So I think there's a compliment in there. I figured a few things out, but I definitely like this sort of co-opetition dynamic because I have many friendships with other people in the same space as I, and it's very reciprocal. We give and take, and there's a multiplier that comes out of that. So here's the bottom line. Exit planning as a financial professional, the continuity and succession, family investment legacy, and just moving towards their end game meaningfully. What wisdom do you have in that regard?
Well, yeah, big question there. So you're asking specifically about a financial advisor that's thinking about the end of their career and what does that exit look like for them?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think a few things to think about, perhaps not in any specific order, but one is, do you want your business to live on beyond you in your brand? Because I know there's some advisors who say, hey, I'm building a 100-year firm and I want this firm to go on for 100 years. And that's wonderful. Other advisors will say, you know, when I'm done, I want the business to continue, but I'm totally fine selling it to another organization. And now we become an office of a much larger organization and we get under their brand. Our clients are taken care of. Our team members are taken care of, and everybody seems to be happy, and I'm happy because I get to exit. So again, I think it kind of gets back to what are you trying to accomplish here? What's the why? And who are your key stakeholders here? Like who are you trying to make sure that you're taken care of? And I think a lot of times advisors will say, of course, I want to make sure that my clients are taken care of, but also my team members. For many advisors, they've had team members that have been with them for 10, 20, 30 years, and they want to make sure that they're taken care of. So I would say typically advisors will be putting themselves third on that list in terms of who's getting, quote, the best deal here, that they want to make sure clients are taken care of, team members are taken care of, that they're taken care of. So I would just make sure that you're really dialed in on what you are trying to optimize here. And again, in many cases, it's not, I just want to sell to whoever's going to write me the biggest check. Most advisors, that's not what they're looking for. They're trying to come up with some mix between those three variables that I just described there.
Yeah, and all of that is engineered through good planning, having an A team of advisors in the sidecar, helping them navigate through it all. And for me, the most powerful part that I've seen is that if an advisor's end game is coming within 5 years or so, plus or minus, their relevance and impact on their clients who also have their own continuity and succession and family investment legacy issues, the advisor's value elevates because they have this sort of dynastic approach. You think about how much money is going to change hands, and that is a massive can that a lot of people kick down the road. And an advisor who's addressing their own continuity and succession plan in real time becomes more fee worthy, more relevant, more impactful, more referable. And, it's not uncommon. You see advisors where instead of winding down, that last 5 or 10 years is the most meaningful 5 or 10 of their entire career because of the exercise, forcing them to think it through, get it right philosophically, and being process driven. It's a great era right now to be a financial advisor. But here's my next question. Would you say that financial advisors, for the most part, are really prepared for any significant sustained volatility that might appear?
I would say, with a question like that, I think we have to separate advisors out there. You've got some advisors who are on top of everything. They're thinking through plan A, plan B, plan C. They've got the resources. They've got high profit margins. They've done what if scenario planning. So they've got the ability to withstand a 20, 30% decline in the market, 40% decline that might be sustained for a while. So there's definitely that group of people. They're going to be okay. And I think that's fine. And I think, there's another group of people who, if we had a combination of a serious market disruption that was for some sustainable period of time, combined with AI as that continues to advances, that's really a double whammy. And I think for folks that are not prepared for either one of those, I think they could definitely be in some serious trouble. But I think by and large, for most advisors, given how markets have performed over the many decades here, last 100 years, let's say, they turn around. I mean, we know that they come back, and we've got high profit margins. They're typically sticky relationships, so I'm not too worried about a serious disruption from like a declining market or volatility really hurting advisors.
Okay, I like that. And it's interesting. I've had some conversations recently, and you think about the last 18 years, for example. Traditionally, significant volatility in the 30 to 50% range. The recovery would be in years. And in the last couple of years, the recovery has been in months, which is interesting. And, it's funny. I was talking to one of my kids about the difference in investing between timing and time in. Mm-hmm. One of the beautiful aspects of advisory, not only does it force the advisor to be fee worthy, create a client experience, focus on stewardship, but it helps, I think, a lot of people not overreact to volatility and stay invested, stay in, and ride it out. Make some mid-course corrections and adjustments. But I do agree. I think there are some advisors who are vulnerable because of commoditization, any type of disruption. And I'll never trivialize technical ability, but I think it will really be revealing. Those who put as much emphasis on practice management and relationship management, I think, are more insulated from external forces than those who just focus on asset management and technical ability. I don't know what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, I would say that AI is going to commoditize advice, and it's basically going to expose what was not valuable in the first place. And so we just have to be aware of, if I'm an advisor and I'm looking at this AI tsunami that's hitting us, that I have to ask myself, okay, if advice is being commoditized, if people can go to an AI and ask all these questions and get all these answers, then it's like, okay, well, what's my value now as a financial advisor? How do I have to evolve as a financial advisor so that I'm not just relevant going forward, but even in more demand going forward in a world that is consumed by AI. And so I think, I think that'll be something that we can get into here as well is, okay, what am I going to do about AI here? Yeah, it's not just I'm going to add a note taker and I'm going to bolt on this other AI to my practice and call it a day. It's got to be much more than that.
That's a good toe in the water, what you're talking about there, but it will be revealing. There's that old saying, circumstances don't make the man, they reveal him. It will be quite revealing. That shift from the transactional fixation on products. Like, I believe a financial plan is a product. It is a piece of the financial puzzle. But I can find 10 people within 100 miles of me, pay them $1,000, tell them everything, come back in a couple of days, receive a financial plan, never see them again. Or I can go into AI and I mean, you think of every fee-for-service professional. Like, a client can go on to AI and say, do I need a real estate agent? Like, here's my house, the location, details. Do I need a lawyer for this? Do I need like, the commoditization of every aspect of the fee-for-service space, including financial services, is under pressure. But those who embrace it to focus on what AI can't do and the unmet needs and the blind spots that a sophisticated client has, the difference between a plan and planning, the fluid and dynamic, panoramic and all-encompassing planning directionally. So away from any form of transacting to what can you get from me, what makes me fee worthy, what makes me referable. That's, I think, where the opportunity is going to be.
Yeah, and let me share a frame in terms of how I think about that, and I think this will resonate with you because, again, you go back as long as I do, and you remember these days. So as I sort of think about the progression of financial advice over the years, so I think it started decades ago with the product, and here I'm defining the product as a transaction. I'm selling you a stock. I'm a stockbroker. I'm calling you. I'm getting a commission. So we went from a product, and then by the time the early 90s rolled around, we went to a portfolio, and then it became all about asset allocation. We had that famous Brinson Hood Biebauer study that said over 90% of the performance or variability of a portfolio was due to the asset allocation. And so, that raised billions and billions of dollars as people sold that. And so now I get paid for asset allocation. I'm charging a 1% fee. Then we went from a portfolio to planning. So then we get eMoney, we get Money Guide Pro, we get all these sophisticated financial planning systems. And now I got a portfolio, and now I got a financial plan. And now I can really justify my 1% fee. And now I think we're moving to what I'm going to call purpose, and I'm using purpose loosely and broadly. And what I mean by that is if we've got AI that is going to be commoditizing the selection of the product and going to be commoditizing putting the plan together and the portfolio together and rebalancing and doing all of that technical stuff, now it's like, well, what's left? And I think what's left then is more around being a thought partner, helping me navigate uncertainty, because I think the world is getting more complicated, not less complicated. And so I think the advisors that are going to thrive in the future are the ones who use the technology to do all the technical stuff for them, which then gives more time for the advisors to sit belly to belly in front of a client and talk to them about the big decisions that have high consequences that they have to make. And so the advisors who have that ability to sit with that client, to talk to them, to talk about options and alternatives and think about this, think about that. Well, if you go this direction, then that's going to make this thing less optimal over here. What's most important to you? Are you trying to maximize your financial outcome, or are you trying to sleep better at night? Okay. And there's some interweaving between those two, and let's talk about that. Okay. No AI is going to do that for them. That's why I think, as I think about who advisors should be working with going forward, it's going to be, you need to work with people who have complicated financial situations. You need to work with people who have a high frequency of having to make important decisions. And then third is they have high consequences. So if you work with people who fit one or more of those three variables, I think you're going to be in demand forever, because AI can, again, help with putting the stuff together. But I need someone to talk to me about these things, because I don't want to just feel like I'm alone making a big decision like that.
Well, and that's the attitudinal component, is the person who's predisposed to delegation and empowering somebody that will liberate them to go live their life, who doesn't want to get bogged down in the minutia. And you're right. I mean, the advisor who's both goals-based, where a client feels compelled to tell the advisor what financial independence means to them, why it's important to them, what it will do for them, combined with being process-driven, where a client will trust the plan and stick to the process based on the long view. That's the difference between an advisor with salesmanship who's thinking about who am I looking for as a client versus who am I suited for? Where's the long-term fit? That's a very enlightened distinction. I see advisors who are like, they're engineering their community very deliberately. It's not just production and client count and all of these quantitative. They're being very methodical about who they're striving to attract. Now, combine that, you talk about complexity. An advisor who'd be process-driven, gets a client to buy into the process, then needs to start future pacing, because invariably the client, especially now, will have assets outside of the process. You know, obviously with the advent of alternative investments, and the client might have a second home in Palm Springs and all kinds of other assets that may see a liquidity event over the coming years. How do you recommend that an advisor can position the process that gets their eyes on other aspects of what the client has, so the client feels compelled, as treating the advisor like that proverbial CFO, to the point where they don't make any meaningful decision without asking the advisor? How do you suggest an advisor position that?
Yeah, well, I think you're getting at this idea of being the first call, and that you should be so ingrained in the relationship with your client that when anything significant happens in their life outside of their own family, the first person they're going to call is you. And so I think that's sort of the end game that we would be striving for there. Now, this is really for your most significant clients that, again, have complexity in their life, have significant decisions that need to be made, have high consequences. But I mean, I've talked to advisors over the years where they've had clients, and one of the client's kids got arrested for something, and the first person they call is their financial advisor, because they know their advisor knows someone, they know an attorney, they know what to do to make this thing, go away, so to speak. And so, right. I've had a number of advisors that have talked about things like that, drug rehab. We even had a situation with one of the advisors, and this is a firm that has tens of billions of dollars, and they work with ultra high net worth people. When the Ukraine war broke out several years ago, they had a client who had one of their children was trapped over there. And so they called the advisor, and the advisor had connections where they were able to extract that client's son out of a dangerous situation. And now very few advisors are going to do that. And I'm not recommending that you build your business around those one-off kind of opportunities, but I'm just kind of giving an example of the lengths to which some advisors are able to go to in order to serve their clients and to be that first call. And again, there's no AI that is going to replace an advisor that has the ability to do those kinds of things. And again, those are super extreme. I'm not saying that's normal, but I'm just kind of giving an idea of what is actually out there. And so think about, for your particular practice, what's my version of that? Okay, so how can I offer things to my types of clients that they're going to really value that no technology is going to make obsolete?
Yeah, that's excellent. And yeah, the first call where it's literally a knee-jerk reaction for the client. And it's funny, I hear all kinds of stories, I'm sure you do too, where the advisor gets a call from a very substantial client. And the client saying, it's a milestone birthday for my wife. Can we afford to, can I really splurge, 5-star? The advisor's like, well, you could actually, I'm not saying this, but you could actually buy the resort.
Yeah.
But it's that I'm going to call my advisor. And I think through incrementalism and future pacing a relationship, finding that sweet spot between reactive, needs-based advisory and predictive, being consistent in communication over time, and then reacting, making sure the client knows that I make a call, the world stops. They're going to respond. And you're right. I mean, the 20% at a minimum, the ideal client has to have that feeling that I'm not bothering them. They're going to respond. But that is manufactured by a predictive, incremental service model where there's constant touching, triggering moments of recognition and awareness for the advisor's value. I think when you find that sweet spot, predictive, reactive service, that first call blossoms out of that, I have to think.
Yeah, and then I want to add one thing to that too, and I'm gonna call it the emotion piece, for lack of a better word. And the way I want to describe this is, so for the past 2 or 3 years, I've really been into this idea of polarities, and you might call them paradoxes. But the idea is, if you think about yin and yang, probably the simplest concept to think about of a polarity, been around for thousands of years. And there's so much things in our life that are polarities. And as a financial advisor, as a business owner, just think about the areas in how we run our business where we have a tension between I've got this or I've got that. And it's not an either or, and it's not a balance between the two. It's some type of interweaving between the two. And as it relates to this idea of sort of being the first call, and we're talking about the systems and the predictability, the thing I would add is the last 2 years now, actually, it goes back about, 15 years. I've been coming up with 3 words at the beginning of each year, which sort of set my focus for the year. Well, the last 2 years, I've switched it to 3 polarities. And so these are these 3 tensions that I'm playing with throughout the year. And one of my polarities for this year is mythos, method. And mythos is this idea about story, it's about symbolism, it's about meaning, and then method is about process and systems. And so mythos is really about the what, and method is about the how. And so as I think about sort of being this first call, we can get the method right, we can get the systems right, we can get the predictability right, we can get the proactivity right. But I also think there needs to be sort of that mythos in there. There needs to be that emotion. There needs to be that connection. There needs to be that story. There needs to be that depth. And when you can combine those two, that's when I think there's a huge unlock in the relationship between you and your client, where now they view you not just as a service provider, as a vendor, as a someone that I can trust, but it goes much deeper than that. You're someone who can help them see the big picture, who can understand the story of their life, who can understand the different chapters that I'm going through, and where is this story going? It's like, help me think through my life. And again, no AI is going to do that. And I think the advisors who are able to go to that level are the ones who are really going to thrive. And in order to get to that level as an advisor, you've got to be there yourself too. This isn't something you're going to read in a book. You need to have life experience. You need to have self-awareness. You need to have emotional intelligence. And so it's not going to be easy to get there. But for those who can, I think those are the ones who are going to be in huge demand in the future.
Well, that's very thought-provoking.
Do you want to grow your business, strengthen your team, and build a practice with real enterprise value? If your answer is yes, then coaching matters. At Pareto Systems, we help financial professionals implement proven strategies around client engagement, team development, succession, and scalable growth. Your business becomes more valuable, more efficient, and more enjoyable to run. Whether you're refining your client experience, building stronger systems, or preparing your business for the future, our coaching gives you the structure, accountability, and execution to move forward. The first step is a no-obligation call with one of our business strategists. They will walk you through our fit process and determine if Pareto is the next step for you in your business. Visit ParetoSystems.com to schedule your call and start building a business that serves both your professional goals and your life.
I have to think that the bridge from mythos to method would probably be entheos. The enthusiasm. So, I mean, you see this too, I'm sure. The most consistently productive advisors are unshakable in their calling, their purpose, and their sustained enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think
it's not a job for them. It's not even work in terms of the relationship, and they become indispensable because of those, like you said, emotional intelligence. It's hard to put your finger on that, but you know when you're part of that, and it's such a powerful quality. The entheos, the bridge, and with Steve, it's interesting. Your podcast, Between Now and Success. And I've listened to several episodes. Between now and success, in between now and success, there is this interlude, this space between. And it's like this no man's land. I see so many times where advisors, like their resilience is revealed because in between, in that interlude, something happens, an external force, they get derailed, and it's revealing their ability to power through that and make a mid-course correction and refine and optimize what they're doing. I really like that theme. So yeah, let's expand on that, because you need the enthusiasm to take action. You think about the law of diminishing intent. A lot of people have heard you, they've heard me, they agree, and it goes to their heads to die. They're locked in the status quo. They need the enthusiasm. And then when they get rolling, get a little bit of momentum, there's this light at the end of the tunnel syndrome. They get this momentum, they're approaching their inflection point, and rather than flipping on the autopilot switch, they sort of self-sabotage because they want to get there faster. They deviate from the process. I think this is a very thought-provoking conversation around just that combination. Mythos, method, you need both, and in between that entheos. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I think enthusiasm's absolutely a critical piece to all of this, and that also gets back to this idea of the relentless burning desire that we started the conversation off with. Another word that I would put in there with all of this to help wrap things around is curiosity. And I think the most successful people are the most curious people. And it's important that we never lose our curiosity. Mm-hmm. And again, we talk about how much the world is changing. Well, if you're not curious about what's happening, if you're not curious about looking into AI, if you're not curious about looking at all these different things that are happening around us, then you're just going to stagnate. And it's just going to be like water that's in a pool that has no exit. It's just going to get a bunch of bacteria growing in it. So we want things that are constantly flowing, constantly moving, constantly cleansing. It's like water that rushes over rocks. You can drink that because it's purifying by going over the rocks. And so we want that constant movement. We want that constant curiosity. You mentioned autopilot. So at the risk of going down another rabbit hole here, I think this sort of applies into what we're talking about here and might be an interesting thread to pull on a bit. So we talked about mountain climbing. So I did that for about 20 years. So as I'm getting older, I'm like, okay, at some point, I probably don't want to be climbing Mount Rainier again. And so it's like, well, what can I do next? And so I ended up getting into sailing. And so for the past few years, I've been learning how to sail. And as it relates to autopilot, as you know, everyone knows, with today's technology, you're on a boat, in my case, sailboats, you have an autopilot, you have a chart plotter, you have GPS. I mean, you know exactly where you want to go. And if you want, you can just press some buttons. You can look at your screen. You can say, I want to go 270 degrees this direction. And you just sit there and the boat steers itself and everything's all well and good. And that's fine. And I think there's some similarities there in terms of a financial advisor where AI is almost like the GPS. It's like the chart plotter. It's like the autopilot today where you press a few buttons and you get all this great information and it's going to steer a course and it's going to take you to a certain place. And that's good. Okay. So then I thought, all right, that's great. But when I'm out on the water, I don't want to be staring at a screen. I'm out there because I want to be in nature. It's like, that's what I loved about mountain climbing. It's like, I'm out there and I realized that all I needed to survive, I could carry on my back. I had food, I had some water, I had clothing, I had a tent, sleeping bag. It's like, that's all I need, And when you think about it that way, life doesn't weigh very much when that's all you need. So I'm out on a sailboat and there's this thing called celestial navigation. So before we had all this technology, we would navigate by the stars, by the planets, by the moon, by the waves, by the direction that the birds were flying. And so last November, my wife and I flew down to Florida and we spent 4 days taking a celestial navigation class from a guy named John Kretschmer. And if anyone is a sailor, they may know who John is, but he's a very, very famous sailor and probably one of the most experienced celestial navigators alive today. And he's been teaching this class for about 40 years and he's sailed over 400,000 miles and he does celestial nav on every trip. Anyway, my point is simply that, and I'm going to sort of bring this back to an advisor today, is that yes, we need the GPS, we need all the technology, we need all the systems that are going to, get us to where we need to go, and we take advantage of those, and they're efficient and they're productive, and that's all wonderful. But we also, I think, need sort of the celestial navigation piece, because what that does is it keeps us grounded in life, it keeps us grounded in humanity, it keeps us connected to nature. And in the off chance that the grid goes down, you're still going to be okay. Now, I don't do celestial nav because I'm thinking the grid's going to go down, but I do it because I want to maintain that sense of deep connection, that humanity and that interconnection between humans and nature. And so as this relates to an advisor, I think it's the same thing in the sense that there is, I believe, a direct correlation between the advancing nature of technology and the desire for people to have human connection. So as we get more technology in life, I think we have more desire for human connection. And if you go back to several decades ago, John Nesbitt, when he wrote his book, Megatrends, one of his key things that many of us remember is high tech, high touch. It's like that has become so true today. And so as I'm sort of throwing a lot of different things at you here and feel free to pick up on any of them, but just to kind of land the ship here into the harbor or whatever is, throwing all these analogies and metaphors out there. Yeah. Just sort of play between this polarity, of the high tech, the high touch, of technology, and chart plotters versus celestial navigation, between humanity and technology. So just trying to understand, where do all these fit together, and let's not let technology overtake us. Let's always bring it back to me talking to you, to this person in front of me, we're having a deep connection. That's never going to go out of style.
No.
And the advisors who have the ability to have those kinds of conversations and have that mindset and have that ability to co-create the story with the client about what their life means and how you as an advisor can help them clarify what that is, can help them make the big decisions along the way, and can make sure that money does not get in the way and that the money is simply a tool to help them live the kind of life that you're helping them co-create.
Well, first of all, as you were talking, you reminded me of a movie from the 90s with Jeff Bridges called White Squall.
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very powerful, very dramatic. Sailing is such an incredible metaphor because, again, among its many layers, I'm reminded, a mentor told me a long time ago, it's not the wind, it's the set of the sails. The winds of opportunity blow the same for everybody. How are you setting your sails? And, your point about curiosity, you think about the advisors we love to spend time with. They are curious. The clay is soft. And it's not just because of plateau avoidance. They want to keep growing. They have this very interesting relationship between contentment for what they have and ambition for what they aspire to. The Japanese have a word, it's kodawari, which my interpretation of that is it's the relentless pursuit of improvement. It's like a Kaizen type of dynamic. And we're so lucky to be in an environment, in a sector, working with clients where we can. I said to an advisor the other day, I said, you've got 4th generation clients. You are all over your clients' family trees. Who else gets to say that? Like, take a moment, pat yourself on the back, remember your calling, your purpose, and your impact. You are so fortunate. So, and you're right, the celestial part of navigation, it's a great tribute to the origins, the sort of the founders of maritime pursuits. It's also a risk management, component, so that the tech does fail, you're not frozen. You can just keep going. I mean, there's so many things to like about that metaphor. I just love. I'll just cap it here. I've got one more question for you, but just the opportunity we have to really focus on who we're becoming as a person, not just how much we're earning as a professional. That combination, we're so fortunate. Another question that Grok suggested I ask you is, because I think I saw an interview you did, and you might have asked somebody, or they might have asked you, I can't remember, but it's the benefit of hindsight. And if you could go back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, what would you have done differently? And then, of course, if you were to talk to somebody new, what would you tell them in terms of putting them on the right path? Like, just try to answer those two questions in a combination.
Well, let me answer that 2 ways. So the first way is, I hate to say, looking back, I wish I would have done this differently, because the reality is I am who I am today because of everything that has transpired up to this point. And so I don't know what I would be today if something in the past was different, or if I took a different path. I'd just be guessing what it would be. I mean, and I'm pretty happy with where I am today and how life has turned out. Now, it wasn't always easy to get here, don't get me wrong. I mean, there were trials and tribulations for sure along the way, but all of those shaped who I am today. And so I think for me personally, it would be dangerous for me to say, well, I wish I would have done this instead of that, because then I don't know who I'd be today. And I'm pretty happy with who I am today. So I'll just sort of leave that out there as just a general way that I think about it. But specifically in terms of, well, if there is something that I might have done differently, I'll think back to 2012 when I was leaving working with Omani Carson and figuring out what I was going to do next. I was I was 50 years old at the time. Three girls. One was in college. Two more going to college. Probably going to get married someday. We'll pay for some weddings. Probably entering the most expensive part of my life. And I'm thinking about leaving a job and a partnership where I'm actually doing pretty well. And so, long story short, I decided, I want to go for various reasons. And the next year and a half, I just totally floundered. And I didn't take advantage of this time to really think through, okay, what do I want to do? Because I was torn between, on the one hand, go find another job because you got all these bills to pay. On the other hand, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to start a new business. And I had this tension between the two of find a new job. So I did some of that. Try to start a business. I did some of that. Neither one of them went anywhere for a year and a half. And it wasn't until essentially I got a random call from an advisor who said, "Hey, Steve, can you coach me?" And I said, yeah. So literally, and I thank her to this day, literally it was at that point where I said, that's it. I am not going to be looking for another job. I am 100% committed to doing my own thing for the rest of my career. And that was, 13-ish years ago. And I haven't looked back. And again, that wasn't necessarily easy along the way, but things are great these days. So if I had to sort of change anything specifically, it would probably be during that year and a half period, I would have been more thoughtful, more intentional about, okay, what do I really want to do during this period? Because I had sort of a non-compete thing. So there were some things that I couldn't do, but I didn't take full advantage of that time. I wasn't clear in my thinking. I was trying to go down two paths and neither one was working. So it was definitely a big period of frustration. So that's probably something I would change if you tried to pin me down on something.
But like you said, that episode, that interlude was necessary. I mean, you need the cold to really appreciate the warm. You need the dark to appreciate the light. And in the pursuit of temet nosce, know thyself, you probably needed that. And what it revealed, that, from the polarity, you had something pretty good in hand, and you went into a little bit of unknown. That's a powerful, example. Excellent. Well, Steve, this has been terrific. Everybody, if you want to get to know Steve a little bit better, of course, LinkedIn, but Steve Sandusky with an I.
Correct.
Sanduski.com. Between Now and Success is a very thought-provoking podcast, very nice, diverse array of guests and themes. And, You've nudged me about a couple things I've been putting off that I should probably move to the front burner.
Like learning how to sail.
Well, exactly. And other things related. But thank you very much for your time. And we'll have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's great to spend time with you, Duncan.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Always On with Duncan MacPherson, where our objective is to enable professionals to always be working on their business and on themselves. Want to learn more about Duncan and his team? Visit ParetoSystems.com. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests, and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Pareto Systems. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.